It says it's live, but I didn't hear it. Hold on, let me see here. Let me make sure my speaker is up. Can I hear? Can I hear? Okay, I hear. I didn't hear the little tink. For those who just joined us, this is Amor Yisrael. This is Solonomics 101, the Love Project. And take time to heal. And it feels like it's been a very long time, but it's definitely been a couple of days. And I've just been like trying to catch up, you know what I mean? It's a wild and crazy. Let me go ahead and share this thing on social media. It's a wild and crazy little last few days here, but I give the Most High thanks for bringing us to another space and time where we can share this information. I got encouraging feedback, people are hearing it. I guess for those who need to hear it, they're hearing it and getting value from it, and those who don't, they turn it off. So all praise be to the Most High. Like I said again, there's a new, as people are saying, slave movie that they don't want to hear it anymore. Let me make sure and check that my speakers are working. Hold on 1 second. Let me check here. All right. If you hear a little double feed here, my apologies. I just kind of want to see if the speakers are working. All right, they're working. Okay, it's working. All right. The thing is, okay, it's still going. There we go. Okay, it's working. All right, sorry about that. It's still going. Okay, hold on. Oh. Well, if I wanted to know whether or not they're working, they're working. Sorry about that crazy sound and noise. And again, I apologize. I'm a few minutes tardy today. Before you come on air, you got to prep. Some people just think you just like come on air, you got to prep. And if you do anything too close to the time that it's time to come on air, you kind of have an overlap. And I was finishing up one thing. I thought I spaced myself enough, but I didn't. Before you come on air, you got to prep. Some people just think you just like come on. We having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'm going to get it together. I promise. I'm going to get it together. Like, get it together, Mona. I'm going to get it together. All right. So we missed a couple of days. So, I'm going to make it up today. And then I saw, interestingly enough, that they are, I just look like a talking head right now. Interesting enough, they put for one day only that you can see this new movie, Underground. I did the review. If you missed the review, go ahead and check it out. And you can see this movie Underground on Facebook. And I thought it would be really cool that after I read this, let's see if we can watch a few scenes together and see if we could pick up any of what we're reading. When I watched it, while I'm looking for the name here, when I watched it, I'm like, oh, wow, you begin to understand more what you're watching. And so that was very interesting. If you don't know, it comes on Wednesday nights. Now it's going to be a series of 10. So it's 9 more to go. And it's coming from a different perspective because it's talking about those who rebelled, who ran away. And so in reading these narratives and studying, I realized that wasn't the only way that they rebelled. Like everybody couldn't necessarily or didn't feel that they had the ability to run away. And so there are studies done in books that talk about the different ways in which the slaves rebelled to their capacity, and so I commented on that. If you missed it, go ahead and check it out. We was in the week, an elder contacted me, told her she got the book and she's excited. So I'm excited. We was in the week. If you don't have it, go check this book out. Right now, it's Women's History Month. Amuna is behind. So I'm going to read like the amount of narratives for the days that I didn't read. So I think that's like 4. So let's go. Mrs. Patience M. Avery is her name. It says here, the address was 215 Kentucky Avenue in Petersburg, Virginia. Susan R.C. Bird is the interviewer, and the date of the interview was March 19th, 1937. It says, I was born on Easter Monday, she says. I never heard of an Easter Monday. That's new for me. It says, I can reckon my age from something that happened when I was a little girl. One morning, my mother come down from her cooking place and gave me 3 cents and said, I'm going where the Captain building fell in Richmond. The Captain building, you know, honey, sits on the brow of the hill in Capitol Square. That very year, I was 7 years old. So they're quoting that's 1870. This is how she's marking a lot of the slaves as we're reading in different narratives. Some of them didn't know their ages. The masters didn't tell them their ages. And so they have to kind of mark how old they are based on events. Now, let me tell you what I did with the money. Can you guess? Well, I used a few pennies for a party. And a party I had too. I had 3 cents for a party on a chair, a 2 cents piece, and a big old cent piece. You see, money in them days was made a little different. We had grand big pennies and half cents. For this party, I bought 1 horse cake and 1 long stick of peppermint candy and an apple. No, child, I can never forget that. So she's saying that her mother gave her 3 cents one day and she went and had a party with this joint. She says, you see, my mother gave me the pennies to make me hush crying. Yes, I can remember this as good as if it was yesterday. How mother stole out and left me. She says, mother belonged to Thomas Hatcher in Chesterfield County, Virginia, and my daddy was the young master. He was named directly after his daddy, Thomas Hatcher Jr. So, the descendants is still in Richmond. Reverend Hatcher, who was connected with the first church, is a descendant. He may be dead now. So she didn't say whether or not so far, whether the father was a European, but he was the master. So we're going to check and see whether or not the mother was impregnated by the master. I see my father one night at a restaurant where Gran and Mama work. I was asleep, Lord. I can remember just as good how they woke me up to see him. Sussy, they had me sleep on an old bench with grandma old yarn dress, a coat spread for me to lay on. I was covered with mother's shawl, and this little bed of mine was pushed up under the counter so I could sleep till they closed the restaurant for the night. I can remember that very night. I woke up just a crying and a rubbing my eyes and a catching my breath between sobs. This is what I hear him say now to him, my father. This is your little princess, like little children will do. I put one hand up to my face and was rubbing my eyes and a crying and a stiffening and a saying, I ain't got no father. I ain't got no father. No, I ain't got no father because my mama told me that buzzards laid me and the sun hatched me. Be careful what you tell your children. Now they're trying to introduce this dude to her. This is your father. She's like, I don't got no father because a buzzard laid me and the sun hatched me. And she came along and picked me up. He no father of mine. He white. So there you go. The father was European. Oftentimes the mothers could not tell the children or the people in the neighborhood, especially if it was master's child, especially after I think it was like 16. I thought we talked about it before, but we'll talk about it again. The court case, they initiated some stuff. The standing of the slave follows the mother. And so a lot of these European men didn't claim their children. And so it was kind of taboo to talk about your mixed race children, even though everyone kind of knew. So she says, this dude is European. He can't be my father. She says, then he took my hand and patted it. And Sussy, do you know, I thought, she's trying to call her Susan. So she called her Sussy. Do you know I was pizen? Yes, I did. Just think. God is wonderful to some of us. Spare us this long honey to tell the tale. How can we help from praising him? So she's saying the Most High preserved her life to be able to tell the interviewer, Susan or Susie, about her life story. She says, yes, Tom Hatcher was very kind to his slaves and didn't allow them to be too severely punished. Yes, sometimes slaves would run away and take refuge on Tom Hatcher's place, as he was very kind to them and didn't return them to the masters. Yet he protected them till he found out where they came from and the circumstances on them leaving. Well, yes, his state was said to be a refuge for slaves when they run away from their cruel masters. Yes, 'tis plenty of places they used to sell slaves. Well, the way we did was to bring slaves in groups, tied and chained together. Then they would put them in pens like cattle. You see horses and cows in pig pens, have you? Well, that's the way humans was treated. Child, it gives you the creeps up your spine to think about it. Sometimes these poor slaves has walked miles and miles. The old masters didn't care. There was a block they could stand you on. First, they examine you a bit. Then they start off selling like an auction sale or property. You know how they say 50, 50, 50, etc., 100, 100, 100. Fine young wench. Who will buy? Who will buy? She got little niggas, good and healthy. The highest bidder could get the slave. All the time the sale is going on, you hear the most pitiful cries of the mothers being part from their children. Sometimes the master would buy the mother and her children. Seldom you'd find that, because they say the children was too much trouble. Richmond was a great slave market. And it's interesting to know, as we were reading other Alexander Falconbridge and John Barber, I think it was. Did we read that one yet? They spoke about the slave markets that you can look up, also the slave markets in Africa. And we're going to touch on that as well, because there were slave markets. They called them fairs, and there were these big markets that we were reading about, that when they captured the slaves, they would come to this big fair, and this is where the slave traders will come and trade and sell slaves. So the same thing that happened in Africa in different nations, because you can't just say Africa, that's very general. So in different slave markets that are known, this is the same things that happen on the other side, which is just very interesting to know. I come to Petersburg after my mother and grandmother died. Right now we're reading about Miss Patience M. Avery. That's her name, Mrs. Patience M. Avery. Uncle Robert Richardson and his wife come here to live, and they brought me with them. I stayed. Oh my God, sissy. I have had it hard. Baby, you don't know. For years, I stayed with a mean old woman, and she was the meanest woman I ever seen. Mean and cruel. Lord, it's a sad story, Susie. But, so she finally calls her Susie. Before she was calling her Sissy. But I'll tell you, but this terrible part of my life, you see, I was treated cruelly because I was this white man's child. Everything the other children did, they would put it on Patience. I was poor, motherless child. And do you know that the time they would give me nothing to eat? Every time that old woman would whip me, she would strip me stark naked and cut me with a strap till I was whelped all over and the blood blisters was everywhere. I couldn't walk, neither sit down. This is when she gave me my last. She says, so they would, everybody's like the color division. Oftentimes you see the color division and the children of full quote black children and the children who by whatever circumstances they become mixed, there is between them contention, you know, and she's testifying that she stuck out on both sides and they treated her poorly. So it says, you know, people used to raise gold for dippers, and the golds grew in vines in everybody's garden. One morning I went in the garden. Yes, I can recollect this particular morning playing round. I saw a great big purdy gourd, carried it to the house, got a knife and made a slip in one end, getting all the seeds out. Then I put a cork in that end, and the other end I make a slip big enough to drop money in. Different one give me pennies from time to time, and I had this all gourd nearly full. Then I started using my money to get little things I wanted. One day, this old devil come home from work, and she called me and say, "What's in that bank of yours? I want you to spare me a few pennies." I told her trembling that I had spent all of it. "Honey," and then she calls on Jay. She says, then she reared and pitched. "Take them clothes off," she said. I had done made up in my mind to run away. So when she started out the door, I went out in my petticoat. In the garden, there was a big branch, and I knew she was going to the branch. So I jumped in, crossed over, and kept running just as hard as I could. The whelps and sore places on my back was just as smarting and a stinging where she had beat me with sticks. Well, I ran across the heights 3 miles, go to a railroad. Then I stopped and slack up, knowing I was out of her way. Up this railroad a piece, I saw a path which led to a little cabin sitting way back in the woods in the big field. I kept walking long, slowly, because I done give out. As I neared the cabin, I saw an old lady standing in the door. Yes, yes, who could forget this? She smiled and laughed and said, "Where you come from, little gal?" I cried and just rubbed my eyes and told her how I was beaten, pulled my petticoat up and showed her. "Well, you sit down there till the white man come. I can't keep you." She see that big white house over there? Well, he'll be here in a bit. There I was scared to death and a shaking and a praying. Please ask him to let me stay. Please ask him to let me stay. She's talking about the woman. She'll kill her if you see me back to town, if you send me back to town. By and by, here comes Colonel Avery. Old lady calls me. "Come here, little gal. I was so nervous. Looked like I couldn't get up." "Damn it, get up from there and tell me where you come from so I finally got up, went to him saying and just screaming, "Please don't take me back to Petersburg." She says, "Shoot me with your gun." So she was so abused that the little girl at this time, she's telling the story, she's a little girl, and she would rather for the man to take her out than for her to suffer that anguish. I saw the old gun behind the door. After telling him the truth and showing the whelps, he said, "Come on, I'm going to Petersburg and find out why you ran away and take you back." I started a crying, she said. She told him to shoot her and to kill her. Give me one moment. Sorry about that. I had to talk to a baby for a second. I had to tell him to go back in the room. Well, he took me to his house, that big white house, called his wife and told her. He said, "This little nigger gal is running away. Keep her right here till I go to Petersburg." Here I am now left at his house with Colonel Avery's wife. She was just as rebellious as could be. She asked me, "What could you do, little nigger? Can you clean knives and forks?" "Yes, ma'am." I took the silver, went beside the house and cleaned it. Next thing I was to go into the kitchen and wash them dishes. I did that. Anything, honey, but going back to that mean woman. That night was a Friday night. He called me and questioned me again and wanted to know if I was telling the truth. I said yes. "Well, I'm going to town and I'm going to find that woman." "Please don't take me. Just take your gun," she said, "and shoot her," she wanted him to do. He asked, "Do you mean it?" I said, "Yes, sir." He went to Petersburg and found this woman. She told him a parcel of lies. Well, he said he told her, "That little nigger gal ain't giving us no trouble, and she's smart round the house," my wife says. "And if she deserved that much punishment, you deserve more. So I'm going to keep her." "No, you're not. I'll get the law," the old woman said. "I dare you. If you do, I have you persecuted to the highest extent." So now they're fighting over the slave girl, this enslaved young girl who ran away, and now he's seeing opportunity. And so for this reason, now he wants to have his slave, and now they're trying to be righteous about who's abusing the child. It says, "This gal is going to stay with me," but I didn't. I stayed on Colonel Avery's plantation and married my husband, who was a slave on the Avery's plantation. Oh, I forget to tell you that just before I married, I went to the north and worked in Massachusetts with a family by the name of J.B. Smith. His father was one of the founders of the Underground Railroad, where helped the slaves to run away to the north to get free from the cruel masters. And this is in the story, the Underground that's playing. This is the focus around that story. It says, "These northern white people where I work, before I married, Mr. Avery was gonna send me to Hampton School. Time and time again, I wish that I hadn't married so soon, but took more schooling. I got this little learning I have been by following the white children to school in Richmond when they come by the shop where my mother worked. When I come to Petersburg, I could read though this do the second reader. So that was her story. She's a storyteller, boy. That was Mrs. Patience M. Avery. That was her story. It's not the first time I heard someone who's enslaved would rather, death than to go back and live in abusive circumstances. And so she ran away. She said she decided in her mind, so she had come to her wit's end. And she said she decided in her mind that, you know what, I'm out. And once she decided that, she was taken in, and she tells the story that her life went on. So that is a story that we would have read last week. So let's go into Mrs. Hannah Bailey, born in 1850, interviewed by Claude Anderson, and the date of the interview was January 15th, 1937. It says, I was born right here in 1850. The Montgomerys had slaves up until the war. Mother used to mingle freely with the Montgomerys. The family always have helped each other. Aunt Hannah is an aged, light-complexioned, white-haired woman of interming. This is the interview and commenting on how the Mrs. Hannah Bailey looks. She says, Aunt Hannah is an aged, light-complexioned, white-haired woman of intermittable age, perhaps 90-odd years. She gave evidence during the course of the interview of good health, good manners, English above average for a person of her age, and certainly some schooling. We bring you her story in her words. So she says, my mother, why yes, she was a slave. She was a slave until she was about 18 years old, but she was freed before the war. Her owner was old Montgomery. He was a bachelor. He freed her before the war, left her money and land and some livestock, but she didn't get any of it. I think she was supposed to get $1 or $100 a month for life. Some said he left all the land from Wellington down to Manassas on this side. The only will left is the one up at Montgomery House over the hill there. They kept it locked up and wouldn't let any one of us see it. We went to the courthouse to see, but somebody has torn out the will from the books. Their excuse for not paying the money was that it had been earned by the work of slaves and the war ended it, money, slaves, and all. Mother was to get that money for life. I know I was up there one day and she read the will to me. So they robbed the woman, basically. She was supposed, this is basically like her mother's reparations from this master, and the courts robbed the money. It said mother was to get the money for life. I know I was up there one day as she read the will to me. I listened, and when she finished, I said, better be careful how you read that. Might have to pay some money out. She laughed and said, I told you about the war ending it all, but if it's true and could be proved, we'd all be rich. The Battle of Manassas was found all around here, or fought. Southern troops can't right over that hill from here. I seen them all around here. I see the cavalry ride right through the cornfield there when it's full of corn, 12 abreast. They didn't care. They used to take everything. Father did get about $12,000 damage after the war. So she's saying her father did get some money. During the war, we used Confederate money, which ended up being nothing afterward. It was, again, this fiat currency. I never will forget how my pa got cheated. The Confederates were retreating and leaving here in a hurry. They needed good horses badly, and one captain bought 3 valuable horses from my father and paid him in Confederate money, i.e. fiat money. That was 3 days before the fall of Richmond. He knew the money weren't any good when he gave it to my father. Please take note. Travis Penn, my brother, worked in a Confederate hospital down where the Manassas School is now. He retreated with the Confederate troops when they dropped back to protect Richmond. I know of one man, Joseph Thomas, who received a pension after the war. So all of the promises, all of the fighting, all of the carry on, she's saying that this Confederate money was no good. And by the way, I know I did a video before. Coming up in April, they had the governor of Mississippi, I believe, declared April, Confederacy Month, Confederate Heritage Month. So now we know a piece of Confederate history, that they were, those who were fighting to retain slavery in the South knew that their money was no good, and buying people's things on fiat money, kind of like counterfeit, knowing that it was going to crash, and basically people were robbed and cheated out of their possessions. All right, so now we're going to read Carolyn Baxter, 1850. For those who just joined us, I'm catching up here, you know, because it's been a wild week. We was in the wheat. We're reading the narratives, Women's History Month, the Left Project, the day portion. And so now we're going to read Carolyn Baxter. And then I'm going to see if something works here. I know I want to see if it comes through on your side. So you guys have to tell me if you're hearing it and if it works, because I want us to just slightly look through the underground as it relates to what we're reading. They posted it, the first episode, so I want to see if you guys can hear it while we're watching it collectively, because if you can, then I have some other ideas how we can watch some of these slave narratives and break them down based on the source information. So I'm going to read Carolyn Baxter. Caroline Baxter, date of birth, they're saying 1850. Okay. And they say the following interview, comments, and sketchy notes are all that were found of Carolyn Baxter. They are given here as written. So they didn't, that's what they're saying. A rather prim-looking, well-preserved old lady, Carolyn Baxter of Berkeley, on the outskirts of Norfolk, Virginia, greeted me, resigned, and admitted that she knew all about slavery. A feature article about her had appeared in the Norfolk Journal and Guide the Sunday before. She had told that she knew what she knew to the newspaper men, she informed me, but she had no idea it was going to cause all these people to come here and ask more questions. So Miss Baxter, she went into the newspaper. That probably might be on microfilm. Norfolk Journal and Guide. And now everybody wanted to know more about it. And that had to be in the 40s or the late 30s, because this is when they're doing this project. Wanted to get tobacco, went out looking for the teacher, took her solid pain in it. George Adaman, Greensville, North Carolina. Go outdoors, look too straight at anyone. What you looking at? I'll pop you in the face. So again, she's just speaking really choppy, and she's just letting them know that when you go, you couldn't look. And we see that in the movie. What you looking at, boy? Or what you looking at, gal? That what to them was a sign of disrespect, and they felt that they had the right to hit you. Want the Lord to take them away. Mother weighed 250 pounds, 1.5 yards to make one of her sleeves. So she had a really big mother. Father was scratchy, made me comb and plait his hair. Rest up little bit, can't spare her. Don't speak another word. Wham you my stick over your head. Don't spute. Again, this is reading. It says Clarissa Chisholm, John Cheatham, hung at Currituck Courthouse. So they killed somebody. Killed a white girl, lived with him and wife. March Humphreys, buck and paddle. Tombstone 3 times lightning. So somebody got hit 3 times by lightning. Again, it's not comprehensive. It says Greenville, North Carolina, with daughter eye hurt so bad. The war, Dallas Baxter, 2 years old than she was, dressed up too fine. Met him on the road. Lady, will you bear company? You'll have to ask mother and father. And I think this is the work of the reporter was supposed to put it together. I think this is the shorthand. It says Bullyard near Slingo died when daughter was 15 years old. Mrs. Simmons in her 70s. March the 10th, doesn't know what year. Shawboro mother, baby, I got a letter for you. Mother real sick and died. Children raising grown people now. Call you anything they want. What you got to do with me? Put a brick side your head. So this is not the first time. We heard it before where they were complaining, or maybe we didn't yet, where they were complaining about the children of that day not having a respect. So people say, oh, it's the rap music that made the children not have respect. It's hip hop, it's R&B, it's a TV. But she's saying in the 40s and the 30s that the children that were coming up after slavery, according to their estimation, were disrespectful. So, you know, we got to put all this stuff into perspective. She says she wants to hear about her Jesus when the world is on fire. Do you want to hear about her Jesus, she says, when they all consume? Spinning wool and cotton, she says. Grandmother had a red handkerchief and a basket on one arm, shoes on the other. So glad to see her, carry you home. Well, kitty, old lady, come again, come after Carline. And so she goes on speaking in this way. I'm going to get a more comprehensive one because it's just the way she writes it, the way it's written. Let me let you see. The notes are just not very fluent for reading purposes, but definitely for research purposes. If you get the book, read Caroline Baxter. But I'm gonna go ahead and get another woman's narrative, and it will be Fanny Berry. She's well-spirited. Miss Fanny Berry. And then we're going to end this because hers is pretty long. Miss Fanny Berry is going in. Hers is pretty long. This is who we're going to be reading right now. See her face. Don't she look spunky? She over there pointing at the people like, yeah, I got a story for you. Miss Fanny Berry. Welcome to those who just joined us. This is the Left Project. My name is Amuna Yisrael. We are catching up, so I'm doing overtime on the catch up right now. Nice to see you again too, Sister Angel. Thank you for joining us. It's been a wild week, so definitely if you have anything to say, feel free to put it next to the conversation on this live stream. And I'm going to go ahead and read Mrs. Fanny Berry. And then we're going to see if we can hear it. I'm going to test it. If we can hear it, I'm going to close this live stream and open up interactive conversation on that underground, and we could watch it together. It says Fanny Berry, 1841. She was born, and this is out of Petersburg, Virginia. And again, Susie Bird is the interviewer. Hold on one second, because this lets us know Susie Bird seems to have done a lot of interviews, and it tells you Susie Bird is Black. See right here. So they tell, this book is cool because they tell you about the interviewer. So she is connecting. You see in some interviews, they talk really short, but and I see Susie Bird's name come up a lot. There were some white interviewers and there were some male and some female. And so it looked like they were more comfortable with Susie R.C. Bird. And she was quote unquote Black woman. So Fanny is about to go in and tell her a lot about her life. So it says, Fanny Berry was apparently a prolific tale teller and was visited a number of times by interviewers. The results is a mass of material that is not always internally consistent. When there are two or more versions of an anecdote, it is not always clear whether the variations of the product of Fanny Bird or the various editors. Where the difference is not substantial, we have given what appears to be the oldest version. So she's like a griot, you know what I'm saying? That's why her narrative is about to be long. She looked like a storyteller. It says, where the anecdotes of, okay. It says, there seems to be some confusion about Mrs. Berry's age. Her interview states that she remembers Halley's Comet. If this refers to Halley's Comet, then she must have been born at least a few years prior in 1835. When Halley's Comet appeared. In another place, she states that she got married at 16 years old in 1858, which would make her birth around 1842. So they're not sure. Again, we're reading Elder Fanny Berry right here. She says, I don't know when I was born, honey, but I could recollect the first comet come, and that was a long, long time before I was set free. My white folks done a whole lot of talking about the comet. They call it Halley's Comet, and I think, yes, they said this thing shoots across God's sky. You smoke broken pieces of glass, the children did, to see it good. I remember I was scared when Mrs. called me to look at it. Yes, then I was a girl about 10 or 12 years old, and then at the time, they started hiring me out. I belonged to a man by the name of George Abbott in Appomattox County, the mountains. He had a great big farm, and man, sir, we did work it. Oh, Lordy, Lordy, them days was days. When we went to church, Bob and Tom would hitch master's steers to wagons and put planks from side to side for seats. Ha ha, she said, she laughing. You know how slow steer travel, Miss Sue? Remember all them white folks were up in the wagon, and we niggas all walked behind this wagon. But some slaves got mission to go through the woods, or permission, she's saying. Sometimes a storm would come and we would run under the trees for shelter. Often the old creeks would rise so we couldn't get back home till way in the night when the rain stopped. And do you know sometimes it was so dark you couldn't see nothing, not even your hand before your face or before you. Then, alas, all us had a piece of light wood and would light it and go through the woods. Always, no matter how late we slaves come in, mistress was on a lookout and would let us in. I'm going to tell you this little tale, Miss Sue. Mrs., you know, was very good to us. Ha ha. And this happened. So she's saying she had a good, and again, to qualify, they good mistresses, ones who didn't beat or abuse them in their estimation and fed them and gave them clothes. One day a storm was coming up and master sent me 5 miles to get him a drink of whiskey from Mrs. Father's house. Remember, Mrs.? Daddy stilled whiskey. When I got there, it was pouring rain. Well, old Martha poured this ticker full for my young master and said, run along, gal. Child, it poured. I mean, and I didn't have on but one piece. I didn't know what to do, so I took off that and hung it across my shoulders and kept going. Water came up to my waist in ditches and places in the road. Mother had told me not to go under trees when it was lightning, but stayed in the middle of the road. When I got to the bottom of haunted woods, I saw there was a grand big white thing. The closer I got to it, the more scared I was. Child, my hair stood up on my head. Guess, Miss Sue, what was that? Ha ha ha, she said. And lo and behold, it was Mother coming to meet me, bringing something to put round me. Honey, I never will forget that day. So this dude sends her out for some whiskey in the pouring rain as a little child. And I know, go ahead back. That's my little child. And the pouring rain, and her mother comes to see her. It says, when I got home, old missus had me rubbed down with warm grease. Sally and Jan, old gals, rubbed me till I felt warm. Then my missus took and give me a good drink of whiskey. So you talking about child, anyway. So they gave the child whiskey and threw me over in the bed behind her. I heard Mrs. call Mother. Plenty? How is the little nigger? I hope she doesn't get sick. Do you know I slept all night and didn't catch cold? I was some kind of tough. I came to Petersburg the first year of the Civil War. Then the comment had done been here. I was up in my teens. As old folks used to tell us, you ain't got no business knowing your age. So it's interesting to know this stuff. The old folks would tell them you don't have any business knowing your age. Let me be all I know, she would say. You're old enough to smell yourself. They still say that. Ha ha, baby, is you writing that down? So she like giving jokes. You understand what I'm saying? And she want to make sure the story's on record. Miss Fanny Berry, boy. We had 2 dresses a year that the white folks give us. Would wear them all day, you know. They got dirty, and at night, such another washing and hanging in front of the big fireplace. In them days, you had big fireplaces, and you would pile logs on a fire blaze and burn so hot till a slave had to set back in the middle of the room. Now you want to know how slaves were sold? Sad times. Slaves were sold off of blocks, raffled off. Some would bring as much as $1,000. Aunt Ella was sold for $1,000, and Mrs. brought her. She, you know, was Mother's sister. I know an old white man who had 100 head of slaves, and he sold them. This is the way he did his slaves. There was young gals, and they was marched down to the train. Baby, baby, I can recollect it. A terrible time, too, it was. There was a great crying and a carrying on amongst the slaves who had been sold. 2 or 3 of them gals had young babies taken with them. Poor little things. As soon as they got on the train, this old master had train stop and made them poor gal mothers take babies off and laid them precious things on the ground and left them behind to live or die. When babies were left that way, they didn't belong to nobody. And some poor white man would take them and raise them up as his slaves and make them work on the plantation. And if he wanted to, he could sell them, or he would sell them. On the other hand, master who bought the mothers didn't want gals to be bothered with these little children because he had his cotton fields for new slaves to work. Child, it makes me shudder when I hear talk of the cotton country. I ain't never seen there, and I don't want to. And this is not the first narrative I heard about them making the mothers stop on a long journey and abandon their children on the side of a road for any passerby to, like she said, to live or die, and some passerby to take them up or just leave them there. All of this stuff needs to be understood. Why is Amuna going through this lead project? Thank you all those for just joining us. You know, sometimes people like reparations. We can't just broad brush over all that has happened because we lose the value. When you get in a car accident, this is just a side note. When you get in a car accident, they send out somebody to assess the damage. When you say, hey man, my car was totaled, I have insurance, you know, you got to pay me. They send out somebody to assess the damage. And in assessing the damage, they're going to be able to see how much, if you were injured, most I forbid, if something happens, somebody else's injured property, you need to know the damages. And so even though it hurts, you still go to the doctor to get an assessment. You still go to the chiropractor to get an assessment, depending on who you're going to sue. So people understand that when people are talking about reparations, or when you're talking about healing, or when you're talking about assessing the damage, if you don't know all that happened and just say, hey, you enslaved me, that's not really categorizing the offenses. That's not really laying it out. And that's why I'm saying once we get past the initial shock and begin to articulate, not only for others who we say, oh, but for ourselves, so that we can assess the mental, emotional, and spiritual damage that has been done. Then we talk about progress. But I'm going to continue reading because people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about slavery. I have slave fatigue. And I'm like, but yet still, you're still hit with the results of it. You're still living it today, but not assessing the damage and complaining about it. Yeah, it's here or there. But I'm going to continue with Miss Fanny. It says, out of this parcel of 100 slaves, one slave stayed behind because a little white gal cried and bellowed so after many had been her nurse. Have mercy, she says, Jesus, she prays. Do you know God done whip some of them mean devils and give them some of their own medicine? Speaking about the European slave masters. Now I'm going to tell you this and stop. Ain't you tired of hearing this stuff? So even Miss Fanny telling the black interviewer, like, you tired of hearing this stuff? And the answer was no, because Miss Fanny continues to go on. But anyway, now I'm going to tell you this and stop. Ain't you tired of hearing this stuff? Ha ha! And I can tell you, I'm telling you true tales. Is the tail got any hair on it, honey? She said, does the tail, she's funny, does the tail have any hair on it? Okay. There was a slave named Daphne. Her mother died and her mother's mistress kept and raised her till she was a good-sized girl. Daphne's father remarried and he went to get this child from the white folks. You see, Daphne knew no other parents but these two white folks. Peter Plunkett, her real father, wanted his child. He went to the house and got it. The gal didn't know him. She undertook to run away from him and he whipped her. And what do you reckon? Oh, Massa and Mrs. pitched in on him and frailed him. The colored people took sides with the white folks. And the case was carried to court. At the trial, I was right there in the front row of the balcony. They had the white mother and father standing on one side of the room and his child's own father and stepmother on the other. Old judge told Daphne to go to her mother and father and bless my soul if she didn't run right up to them old white folks. Ha ha, she said. One time, Miss Sue, this was right funny. There was an old lady patching a quilt, and the patty rollers, or the patrollers, or the police, was looking for a slave named John. John was there funning and carrying on. All at once, we heard a rap on the door. John took and run between Mary Lou's legs. She hit him by spreading quilt across her lap and kept on sewing. And do you know, them patty rollers never did find him. So she's giving a story about, again, I know you heard it. I like to reiterate. John is there. He's running from these patty rollers. And Mammy Lou is quilting, and he's up under the quilt. And this is what she says saves him from being taken away. She says, now another story. Poor Aunt Nellie. The patty rollers whipped her one day. She took and went up in the barn, hid in the hay. When night comes, she crawled out and went out in the woods and climbed top of a hill and rolled down. We missed her, but didn't think the gal was going to kill herself like she had told me the day before. Fanny, I done had my last whipping. I'm going to God. This is what she says. Aunt Nellie says. The bread where her old mistress had done give her wasn't never been touched and was found beside her. The buzzards had carried poor Nellie's head down the woods and picked her eyes out. So the woman killed herself because she couldn't take it anymore. It says here, you asked something about runaway slaves. Well, there was a gal in our flock named Rachel, and I love that gal. You know, the white woman that I was hired out to had Rachel and me to sell pies. Well, while we were selling at the train, a little white boy came along and asked, wasn't that Mammy Rachel? But the other boy who was with him said no, because Rachel was dead a long time ago. I called Rachel and told her someone wanted to see her, and when she saw him, she recognized him at once and said, how'd you do, Mas Tommy? Mas Tom slipped round and told me to bring her down and put her on the train. Oh, how he did beg me to get the gal for him. He said he had promised to bring my mother a present, and Rachel would be just the present she would want. You know, I was afraid to bring her. I sent her to get some potatoes on the other side of the train, and after the train gone, a slave told me her master grabbed her and pulled her in the train window. All of us looked and called every which way, and no Rachel to be found. Rachel was brought from Negro traders by old Bill Duffy, old dog. I hate his name. Bill Duffy said he got her again and she would never run away no more. See, he didn't know she was stolen away by her young master. These two boys carried her to the mistress that she belonged to before she was bought. Bill Duffy said he got her back and he would beat her so she'd never leave again, but he didn't because she was taken back to her mistress. She goes on to say there was a settlement called Umbla in Appomattox. This, honey, was a Negro settlement. Them people wasn't never slaves. Let's get that again. There's something for us to research. She says there was a settlement in Umbler, Umbler, in Appomattox, Appomattox, she says. This, honey, was a Negro settlement. So this is in the latter part, before freedom, 1865, right? She's saying it was a Negro settlement. Them people was never slaves, so they were freedmen. They would hire themselves out to work for white folks, but they always went to their own homes at nighttime. Again, the thought that everybody was slaves. Everybody was not slaves. But old sis Polly Monroe had a husband who was a freeman. She always kept him locked up in her basement during the day. If the white folks had caught him, they was going to kill him and her too for keeping him there. Now she's going to comment on what she knows about Nat Turner. So it was hard for freedmen. It's not the first story. Again, it was hard for freedmen because there was still kickback and there was still prejudice. There was still these things that they had to face. Nat Turner, back for the 60s, I can remember my mistress, Miss Sarah Ann, coming to the window and hollering, the niggas is arising, the niggas is arising, the niggas is killing all the white folks. Okay, y'all don't mind my thing. This is how she writing it. I'm just trying to read it to get in the, anywho. It says, and all the babies in the cradle. It must have been Nat Turner's insurrection, which was sometime for. It must have been Nat Turner's insurrection, which was sometime for the breaking of the Civil War. I was waiting on table in the dining room, and this day they had finished eating early, and I was cleaning off the table. Don't you know? Must have been a good size gal. If this tale refers to Nat Rebellion, they're saying 1831. Then they're saying she would have been about 1823. So they're still trying to find out based on her stories when she was born. And that rebellion was in 1831, and she's recounting it. It says John Brown. If those who don't know who John Brown is, definitely check that out as well. It says, yes, I remember something about him too. I know my master came home and said, on his way to the gallows, old John stopped and kissed a little nigger child. How come I don't remember? Don't tell me I don't, because I do. I don't care if it's done been 1,000 years. I know what master said, and it is as fresh as it was that day in my mind. This is the song I heard my master sing. Old John Brown came to Harper's Ferry town, purpose to raise an insurrection. Old Governor Wise put the specs on his eyes and showed him the happy land of Canaan, and he took him out. So she's saying she remembered. Nobody don't tell her that she don't remember, because she do remember. And this is the song. She recounts the song. I found it interesting what she says right here. I like to outline stuff that I think is psychological. She says, she gets a little bit defensive, like, don't tell me that I don't remember. And then she says this, I know what master said, and it is as fresh as it was that day in my mind. So the master's conversation, even on to today, like we just read the story before that she was talking about, where the little girl is cared for by these European, and you remember that it stains the mind. So when I talk about traumatic bonding, and I talk about the relationship that a lot of quote unquote Black people don't want to admit to with Europeans, our foreparents who were here in the Americas had a very intimate relationship in the sense of on many levels. Like she was living in the house, they would sleep in the same room, they would be waiting on them. So this is a relationship that they would be privy to information, emotions, feelings, thoughts. All of these are downloaded. They're conflicted because this is your oppressor. At the same time, this is your provider. And that's what they talk about, the Stockholm syndrome. This is what they talk about, traumatic bonding. And oftentimes, you know, people just be like, oh, you know, they want to retaliate without even really understanding or admitting the truth that a relationship existed and still exists, and where the Black person oftentimes wants to complain to massa, who represents massa, because in their mind thought process, this is still who has the power over me, and what they say is law. So when your quote unquote fellow brother or sister says something, just like in the time of slavery, it doesn't have as much weight as when a European says something. If you think I'm lying, just pay attention. But I'm going to go on. Invention. My master told us that the nigga started the railroad, and that a nigga looking at boiling coffee pot on a stove one day got the idea that he could cause it to run by putting wheels on it. So she's saying that her master told her that it was a Black person, so-called Black person, who started the railroad. This, she calls him. And by the way, you see that people say, oh, she is a woman who's mimicking the verbiage of the master. And this is her. I want to read it as she's writing, unless there's some really wild stuff. This is her referring to one another as nigga. This is not gangster rap. This is not, like I said, something modern today, which they do. This is Fanny Berry, an old lady calling her fellow brother and sister a nigga. Okay. Which I don't condone. I'm just reading it. This nigga, being a blacksmith, put his thoughts into action by making wheels and put coffee pot on it. and by some kind of means, he made it run. And the idea was stole from him, and they built the steam engine. This doesn't sound like anything new. Relationship. I was one slave that the poor white man had his match. See, Mrs. Sue, talking to the reporter, these here old white men said, what I can't do by fair means, I'll do by foul. And if you remember in the Roots movie, they quoted that. That must have been a saying that they had. What they can't do by fair means, they'll do by foul. One tried to throw me, but he couldn't. We tussled and knocked over chairs, and when I got a grip, I scratched his face all to pieces. And that was no more bothering Fanny from him. But oh honey, some slaves would be beat up so when they resisted. And sometimes if you rebelled, the overseer would kill you. Us colored women had to go through plenty, I tell you. Understanding the experience. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that? Do you understand the experience? Let's not just whitewash the experience. Let's understand. She's saying that basically they were coming to molest her, and she rebelled. She scratched him, and they didn't bother her. But not everyone, as she's saying, was so fortunate. Some who rebelled, that was their life. And she's going to talk about marriage. Give me 1 second, and we're going to go into marriage. Like I say, Miss Fanny Berry, she's dropping the beans here. So just let me give 1 second while I settle down these babies. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right. Thank you for that. I'm back. Some of this stuff is kind of brutal. I don't like the babies walking around in these narratives. Some of the other ones, but some of these go very graphic, so I have to settle them down sometimes. I see Sister Angel says heart-wrenching. She says she would have been killed before leaving her child behind. And then she asked reparations. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that question, sis, of reparations. I find that that interesting here. Yeah, there's a lot of talk. There always has been a lot of talk centered around reparations. And like I said, when we don't or not willing to assess the damages, if you have anything, it's just like comment. I don't understand it. I do understand it, but I don't understand, because in the regular world of where we are, you know what I'm saying? If your house is damaged, if whatever happens, you're gonna see somebody having to come. You're gonna see somebody having to come and assess the damage. There is a bill out, HR 40. John Connors out of Michigan. I think he's out of Michigan. Yeah, and he's an elder. He's been, I think I've said this before, he's been in the Senate for 51 years, I think. And I did a video on it, reparations, right? And he has for the last 20 years been introducing this bill, HR 40. And what the bill is to allocate, I think it's like $7 million to the research of the damages, not for reparations. This is to research the damages, the assessment of the institution, all who were involved, and the damages that ensued and how it relates to today. So what we're doing is what he's talking about and what he keeps presenting to the floor. And part of what was in that bill is that to have a national educational program that is going to educate not only Black people, but white people as well, and people in general, of the institution of slavery and what actually happened. Because again, there's so many documentaries and people who have come out by showing that nothing has really changed, and it has just changed form a little bit. But all of what is happening to Black America is coming out of slavery. So when I hear someone and people say, I don't want to talk about it, I don't get it. Anywho, let's continue. Marriage. Elder Williams married me in Miss Delaman's, a quote unquote white person's parlor on the Carter Road or the Cradle Road. This house still stands. The house was full of colored people. Miss Sue Jones and Miss Polly Clark, white people, waited on me. So that's something to note. Like, you know, they started waiting on me now because it's my day. They took the lamps and we walked up to the preacher. One waiter joined my hand and one my husband's hand. After marriage, the white folks give me a reception. And honey, talking about table, it was stretched clean across the dining room. We had everything to eat you could call for. No, didn't have no common eats. Ha ha. We could sing and dance, old square dance, all us choose. And she said, Lord, Lord, I can see them gals now in that flow, just a skipping and a trotting. And honey, there was no white folks to sit down and eat for you. So she's remembering her treatment during slavery. Okay, war. The heading war is inappropriate, they say, for most of the material below is given here as it is in the pencil copy. To the beginning of the first paragraph seems to indicate some sort of hiatus between the material and the foregoing. Now, Miss Sue, take up. I'd just like to talk to you, honey, about them days of slavery, because you look like you want to hear all about them and all about the old rebels and them niggas who left with the Yankees and were set free. But po things, they had no place to go after they got free. Baby, all us was helpless and they had nothing. And as you see, I've read this before, so I have just collecting along the way these little jewels. I don't know how it's all gonna fit together yet, but I'm just collecting it because this scene is also in Roots when they got free, and the argument was where are they gonna go. So when you understand that these writers are studying in order to write, it's anyway. It says, I was free a long time before I knew it. We read another story about a woman who didn't know that she was free for like over 10 years. They had her still working like she was a slave. I was free a long time before I knew it. My mistress still hired me out till one day, in talking to the woman she hired me to, she, God bless her soul, she told me, Fanny, you are free and I don't have to pay your master for your work now. For you now, you stay with me. She didn't give me no money, but let me stay there and work for victuals and clothes because I ain't had nowhere to go. So these Europeans, they were so dishonest to the people in the South who may have been secluded and not understood that they were free. They were so dishonest that they still kept them in servitude without giving them a choice. She says, JJ, God or God help us. You children don't know. I didn't say nothing when she was telling me, but done decided to leave her and go back to the white folks that first owned me. I planned to attend a big dance. Let me see. I think it was on a Thursday night. Somehow it took and got out. You know how gals would talk. And it got to old Bill Duffy's ears, old dog. And baby, do you know, mind you, 'twas slavery time. But the old woman got so mad because I run away from her. She set a whole parcel of them out looking for me. There was a boy who heard them talking and said they was going to kill me if I were found. I will never forget this. This boy come up to me while I was dancing with another man and said, nobody knows where you are, Miss Moore. They is looking for you and is going to kill you. So you come on with me. Have mercy, my Lord, honey. You can just guess or imagine my feeling. For a minute, I couldn't move. You know, the gal and the boys all got round me and told me to go with Squee. They call him Squee Ball. Okay. That he would show me the way to my old mistress' house. Out we took and we ran out straight mile up the road, then through the woods. Then we had to go through a straw field. That field seemed like 3 miles. After then, we met another skid of woods. Miss Sue, baby, my eyes, was buck and two. And it is such a thing as being scared. Your hair stands straight up on your head. Because I know mine did. And that wasn't it. Oh, that wasn't all. That boy and me puffed and sweated like bulls. Wasn't fair to stop because we might have been tracked. At last, we neared the house, and I started throwing rocks on the porch. Child, I took and heard the white woman when she hit that floor dancing. Sorry, dancing. I'm thinking about dancing. She was at the dance. She was clubbing, and she heard them dudes was coming. So I'm still thinking about dancing. I'm sorry. Woman, when she hit the floor bouncing out that bed, she must have felt that I was coming back to her. She called all the men and had them throw a rope to me, and they draw me up a piece to the window. Then I held my arms up and they snatched me in. Honey Squeeball fled to the woods, and I ain't never heard nothing about him. And do you know, I didn't leave that woman's house no more than for 15 years. So after freedom, she goes back to the original owner and works, I guess, for food and board, and she stays there another 15 years. Lord, Lord, Honey Squeeball and I used to sing this song. 'Twas 1861, the Yankees made the rebels run. Well, all gone blind, we're all gonna stone blind when the Johnnies come a marching home. Child, and here's another one we used to sing. Remember the war done been when we would sing these songs. Listen now. So she's going into singing now. Ain't no more blowing of that 4-day horn. I will sing, brethren, I will sing. And cold frosty morning, the niggas mighty good. Take your axe upon your shoulder, nigga, talk to the woods. Ain't no more blowing of that 4-day horn. I will sing, brethren, I will sing. And if we've been listening, they used to blow the horn before a day for them to get up and go to work. They wouldn't eat breakfast, some of them till noon. Some of them would eat little bites and go on. So they're saying that's over. Or so many thought. It says, here's another song. Kimo, Kimo, there you are. Hey, how rump to the poom diddle. Set back, pinky wink. Come Tom nippy cat. Sing song kitty cat. Can't you carry me over? Up the darkies, head so bold. Sing song kitty, can't you carry me over? Milk and dairy, 9 days old. Sing song kitty, can't you carry me home? I was at Pamplin and the Yankees and rebels was fighting, and they were waving the bloody flag, and a Confederate soldier was up on a post, and they were shooting terribly. Guns were firing everywhere. All of a sudden, they struck up Yankee Doodle song. A soldier came along, called me, and said softly close to me, how far is it to the rebels? And I, honey, was feared to tell him. So I said I didn't know. He called me again. Scared to death, I recollect getting behind the house and pointing in the direction. You see, if the rebels knew that I told the soldiers, they would have killed me. These were the Union men going after Lee's army, which had been before them to Appomattox. She says the colored regiment came up behind, and when they saw the colored regiment, they put up the white flag. You remember for this red or bloody flag was up. Now, do you know why they raised the white flag? And then the interviewer said, no, tell me why. Well, honey, that white flag was a token that Lee had surrendered. Glory, glory. Yes, child, the Negroes are free. This is the first time she says Negroes. This is amazing. All the other times she's calling them the N-word. You understand? And this is the first time she says Negroes. She says, glory, glory. Yes, child, the Negroes are free. And when they knew that they were free, they, oh baby, began to sing. Mammy, do your, here go the song they sung. Mammy, don't you cook no more. You are free. You are free. Rooster, don't you crow no more. You are free. You are free. Oh hen, don't you lay no more. Eggs, you free. You free. I can say much, but let me continue because Miss Fanny Berry is going in on this story. Such rejoicing and shouting you never heard in your life. Yes, I can recollect the blowing up of the crater. We had fled, but I don't know about the shelling of Petersburg. We left Petersburg when the shelling commenced and went to Pamplin in boxcars setting out on the way. Them were scared times to cause you to look to be killed any minute by stray bullets. Just before the shelling of Petersburg, they were selling niggers for little nothing hardly. So now the price done plummeted. You know what I'm saying? Now they having free for all sales because slavery is done, and now you're not gonna get what you paid for. The enslaved peoples. It says they were selling them for little and nothing. Jonas Brody, a white man, bought some niggas, but they didn't stay slave long because the Yankees came and set them free. I recollect how Miss Sarah Ann hired out a bunch of niggas to the railroad that they was building through the woods. They come down and hired all the niggas that was round. That's how they do the work. They hire niggas in one place and use them to cut down the timber and saw it up in the ties. Then they move on a hire niggas, hundreds of them in the next place. Well, when the railroad come to Appomattox, they hired the niggas and Miss Sarah Ann hired her to M2. And child, you oughta hear them niggas singing when they go to work in the morning. They all start a coming from all direction with the axe on their shoulders, and they mist and fog be hanging over the pines, and they just breaking across the fields, and they start to sing. A cold frosty morning, the niggas mighty good. Take your axe upon your shoulder. Nigga, talk to the wood. I can't right now. I can't. And the woods just ringing with this sound. Hundreds of them just a singing to the band. They be lined up to a tree and they sing this song to mark the blows. First one chop, then his partner. And when they sing talk, they all chop together. And pretty soon they get the tree ready to fall and they yell, hey! And the niggas all scramble out the way because you can't never tell what way a pine tree gonna fall. And sometimes they sing it like this. This time tomorrow night, where will I be? I'll be gone, gone, gone down to Tennessee. The niggas sing this sorrowful because some niggas have been beat or whooped or sold away. Cause Miss Sarah Ann ain't never sold none of her niggas, but old man Derby, what had hundreds of them, sell some of them anytime old nigga trader come around. So this is good. She has a lot of resources to hear the mindsets. They say song is a way of expressing yourself like poetry. So she's giving us like inroads to the way things were going. Sometimes it's so wild I can't find the words, but Miss Sarah Ann only had 20 or 30 slaves. Sometimes some would die, but then there was always some being born. And if a slave wanted to get married, he had to come to Miss Sarah Ann and get her to say it was all right. If you want to marry one on another plantation, Miss Sarah Ann would first find out what kind of nigga it was you wanted to get hitched to. And if the nigga was a good nigga, I can't right now, Miss Sarah Ann would try to buy him so a husband and wife could be together. Miss Sarah Ann had a nephew what used to come down from the city and visit with her sometime. He was high folks too, just like Miss Sarah Ann. And the niggas all liked to see him come visit because they was always going on when he get there. He was a sport. He was with all kinds of city ways. Sat round the house all day watching little niggas chilling, singing and dance. Never get up for noon. And soon as he come out on the porch in the shade, all the little niggas come running because he always throw them handfuls of pennies, handouts. And he was his entertainment. This is Sarah Ann's nephew. Soon the sun go down. Then he dress himself up in his white suit and his shiny shoes and start off. He was a man of the night, eh? Lord, child, I ain't never knowed where that man go, but he always come back stiff and loose lag with brandy. And then he'll wobble up to the fence and the niggas wake in a hole. They sides are laughing at him. And he tried to climb the fence. Miss Sarah Ann ain't had no gate in the front yard and he'd fall on the ground and he'd pick himself up and he'd try again and fall back. And he'd keep that up some time, getting nearly over, but always falling back. And then after a while, he'll pick himself up and start to sing this song. Chemo, chemo, there you are. Hey ho, the rum to pumadiddle. Set back pennywink, come Tom nippy cat. Sing song kitty, Can't you carry me over? I cannot. For those who've just joined us, I'm reading out of Weevils in the Wheat. If you are listening and you have a desire to read the Left Project, although you seem you're reading a lot, we do have Brother Jason Hughes who have joined us lately. But it is for a collective reading, so it's not only my voice or one voice to be heard. We definitely invite you, if you don't have this book, it's not that expensive on Amazon. If you desire to read, just hit me up under this video or on social media, and we can arrange for you to be on this Google Hangout and read collectively with us. We'd love to hear your voices. And it's just that until we get more volunteers, here I am. So you just have to bear with my comments in between. You understand? It says, you see, there was an old cat named Tom Nippy Cat that Miss Sarah Ann let the slaves keep down in the slave row. And this cat used to roam all around and in the house, and he ain't belonged to any one slave, but he belonged to them all. When Mr. Herbert would call for Tom Nippy Cat to come help him over the fence, all the niggas what was watching him would bust out laughing, and pretty soon after they listened to him song that chemo chemo a number of times, there would some of them come out and lift Mr. Herbert up and put him on his feet on the inside of the fence. And he would walk just straight up to the door and open it and take himself straight upstairs to bed. So the niggas learned that song, and they used to sing it pretty with the words they learned from Mr. Hubert or Herbert, and partly with words got out of their own mind. And all the children used to sing. So they took the song and did the remix. So this is the remix of the song. It says, this is what the enslaved people would sing after mocking the man who was a drunk. Chemo, chemo, there you are. Hey ho, the rump to the pum diddle. Set back, pennywink. Come, Tom Nippy Cat, sing song, kitty. Can't you carry me over? Skippers in the milk till the 9 days old. Sing song, kitty. Can't you carry me over? If you don't get them out, they'll get mighty bold. Sing song, kitty, can't you carry me over? Chemo, chemo, there you are. Hey ho, the rum to the piddle, the puma diddle. Set you back, pennywink. Come, Tom Nippy Cat, sing song, kitty. Can't you carry me over? Uppity darky, head so po. Sing song, kitty, can't you carry me over? If they don't watch out, they'll get the crow. Sing song, kitty, can't you carry me over? So the people had a sense of humor, you know, and like I said, that humanity of how you got through, how did they get through this difficult situation? Yes, there were many, many, many tragic situations, but in the midst of all of that tragedy, they wonder, they say, man, these are the most resilient people. And they're wondering, how did you withstand all of this oppression, all of this pain, all of this agony, and still be here today, still laughing, still smiling, still dancing, still moving, hurt, but still moving. And one of the ways is, like she's saying, they had a bit of a sense of humor. And they used to come round him in the afternoon and sing him his own song to him. And Mr. Herbert used to laugh and try to make him sing his words. But the children always sing them what they done made up. Child, I can hear him now dancing round and bucking to the beat, all goodness. And he's just a carrying on with them. And they come the time old John Brown raised all the ruckus up at Harper's Ferry. I remember old master coming home and saying that on his way to the gallows, old John Brown stopped and kissed a little nigger child. So she said that before and she's saying it again. How come I don't remember? Don't tell me I don't, because I do. I don't care if it's done been 1,000 years. I know what master say, and it's fresh in my mind as it was that day. Anyhow, old master started to sing this song, and all the little nigger children used to sing it with him. Old John Harper come to Harper's Ferry town, purpose to raise an insurrection. Old Governor Wise put specs upon his eyes and showed him the happy land of Canaan. Old John Brown came to Harper's Ferry town, purpose to steal your chickens. They walked him up a slope and they hung him with a rope and showed him the happy land of Canaan. Pretty soon the war come and there was fighting all around and fuss. We went to Petersburg, and she's repeating. That's why they say some of the incidents are repeated. And speaking to elders, sometimes they do repeat. And left Petersburg when the Yankees started to shooting shells in the city. And we went to Pomplin in a boxcar to get out the way. And everybody was scared because you like to be killed any minute by stray bullets. And just before the shelling of Petersburg, they were selling niggas for little or nothing. Hardly. I can recollect a friend of mine's, Julius Brody, bought some niggas, but they didn't stay long slaves because the Yankees come and freed them. And I know I read that before, and I'm just checking to make sure it's not me. Okay. So she has some more stories here. Again, she's the griot. This is the woman who would have known all the stories of all the people in the town. So I'm definitely making up for those days that I missed with Miss Fanny Brown Berry here. It says anecdotes. On a neighboring plantation, when the old heads died out, it was necessary to divide. And that's a word. If you've ever heard that word where they say the old heads, she's saying that's what the slaves oftentimes used to call the elders. Ah, man, check out this old head. I thought that was funny. Maybe that's just me anyway. On a neighboring plantation, when the old heads died out, it was necessary to divide up the slaves among the children. The custom being to put the niggers in a hat and draw for them. The youngest child of the family always had the privilege of drawing first. Mrs. Berry remembers one such lottery. Her mother's husband was drawn by the youngest, George Blood, a lad of 6 or 7. He promptly sold the man to a nigger trader. Probably, so this is just like some arbitrary, no thought into it, like your life didn't have any value, just and no roots. It says probably his older brother sold the slave for him, but since a nigger and a horse don't know their own master, the man ran away before the slave trader took possession and hid in the woods where he stayed 12 months. Finally, Miss Sarah Ann brought him and united him with the rest of his family, his wife and 3 children. Old man Shelton was a terror. One morning when the horn blew for us to go to the field, we started out and heard the most awful screaming and a hollering. Didn't know what was wrong, except in this, that some poor nigger on the next plantation belonging to old man Shelton was getting a hiding. Then someone say it was Dick Davison who had in some way killed one of the hogs on the place. I'm gonna stop right here. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna get a little bit water, refresh myself. We've been reading for a little bit of a time here, so I wanted to get some water, and I'll be right back. One moment. All right, thank you so much for your patience. I had to get something to drink. All right, where were we? Okay, let me make sure we don't have any comments here. If you have any comments or anything that you want to add, feel free to share it. Let me check. My comment is about me not believing that reparations are the answer. Why? Because it will always be their assessment of their actions, and what they think they need to do makes things right. And I find that something that should not be in the hands of the privileged or the oppressed sense of justice. So that is Sister Angel chiming in on the case of reparations. This is so many, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. It's so many it's so many angles, you know what I'm saying? It's so much that people feel about reparations, really depending on your understanding of slavery, the condition, why. One question I have, and I go back to Miss Fanny Berry, there's not even a consensus of why it happened or how did it happen. You know what I'm saying? It's there's so many varying thoughts process. There's some people, and I think that coming to terms within yourself, the individual, of how or why. And you're welcome, Personal Kid. Thank you so much for always commenting, and thank you for being here live. That's Personal Kid. Personal Kid usually comments and leaves comments, so I want to thank you for joining us. But this institution of slavery is a collective as well as an individual thing. The healing from it, the understanding of it, is collective as well as individual. And if the individual doesn't take on this journey to resolve, it's like horrific things happen. But when you forgive something, it doesn't mean you forget about it. And it doesn't mean that you condone it. It means that you have to rectify it within yourself in order to begin to understand it. You understand? And so that's an individual thing. There's some people who they don't understand it. They don't understand why. They don't understand what happened. And so I'm just angry, but you don't know how you're angry at necessarily. You don't know. You understand what I'm saying? And it's just this abstract thing. And this helps us to bring some definition to that abstract thought. So when Fanny Berry, so for me, I think I've gotten to that point where I'm no longer satisfied with the abstract thought or the cliche or stereotypical conversations for myself in assessing, because what's going on around us, you understand what I'm saying? What's going on with us in this society? It helps. It helps to bring less stress to the mind, because at least you understand it, and you can't necessarily change everything, but you can definitely change aspects about yourself when you know where it's coming from. And so that's why for me it's beneficial in the healing journey. And when more people individually go on this journey, then collectively we can make a change. Oftentimes there's been people who come up and trying to change you from the outside, but this is something that has affected the people of the diaspora to their very core. And so now the individuals who vibrate on that level, then they can come in and enter into conversations that's now going to be progressive, because everybody's going to be accountable for their own self now, instead of trying to pass the buck, so to say. But anyway, that's Amuna's only little side thought. Let's continue. Fanny Berry. When the horn blowed for to stop work at noon, there was still a beating him, and some of us went through the bushes back of old man Chenton's hog pen, and there the overseers was just a laying it on the floor on the poor boy's neck back. And poor Dick was just a moaning and a groaning and a begging. Please, sir, pray, please, sir, pray, sir, please, sir, pray, sir. But that old white man kept a laying it on. And every once in a while, that old overseer would get tired and stop and rest. Dick would just draw himself up against the tree trunk and sigh and kind of lie there, because he knew there was more to come. I'm trying to remember. I took a break. I forgot what he did. They say he in one way. This is all for them saying he killed the hog. Okay. So he knew that there was more to come. And presently, old overseer started laying it on again. And poor Dick back was all cut up to ribbons, just like a hog that been struck or stuck. And then someone went and told Miss Sarah Ann, and she come stepping down there right across the fence onto old man Shelton's with her scissors, which she had been sewing with in her hand. And she walked right up to the overseer and pushed him aside and take those scissors and cut the rope that poor Dick cut that been poor Dick to the tree, cut the rope, sorry. And poor Dick fell on the ground and rolled over and twisted just like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to get up and trying to run and not being able to stand. And soon he fell over in the blackberry briars and laid still. Dick was dead. So he whipped him so much that he fell dead. Another time, old Mr. Shelton whooped an old colored woman till her back was all cut up to pieces. She crawled all the way to Miss Sarah Ann's house, and Miss Sarah Ann took a needle and picked out all the splinters out of her back. Old man had licked her with a dried white oak branch, and the hard knots had cut her skin up, something terrible. Then Miss Sarah Ann greased her back with lard and told her to go on back to her master. Even the Torah tells you in the Bible, people often say that and we read a lot of accounts that saying this is not what is written of. The abuse of and the maiming of and the killing of someone who worked for you in this capacity is grounds for releasing that individual. But they had a right, they began to enact laws to say that if someone is chastising their property and something happens, they have that right, and there's no persecution that's going to come. So there was a whole lot of things that began to happen in the process of time that made them so violently brutal. And I think that this also is a pushback mentally in the mind for the European, the fear, because I spoke about epigenetics before and things that go into our DNA as well as their DNA. And there is a fear, continual fear. Even if the man has no gun, they have nothing. You have a wallet, you have a cell phone. The fear of retaliation, the fear of what your ancestors have done leads them to use brute force when it's not even necessary. This is coming from this space and time because they know that they have done some wild and crazy things. And as some of them are left on record to say that if there is a God in their estimation, they're going to pay for that. And I believe it said that Thomas Jefferson said that that's one of the ones we have to read. I have his narrative, in my pile of things to read. So definitely it's good to hear their thought process because they knew, it's like a child who knew they did too much and they knew that they were going to have to pay for this one day. And this is why they're very hyper vigilant, always trying to suppress the Black people within this because they know that it's retributive. It's coming back, stuff like this. It's anywho. It says, thank you for those who have just joined us again. We're reading Weebles in the Read. We're reading Fanny Mae. She's like the griot of the book. So she gave us a lot of information. So it behooves us to get something from it. It says, now Miss Sarah Ann ain't going back. You must go back. He'll only make it worse for you later. No, I ain't going back. He'd only start whipping me again. Lord, child, there ain't nowhere else for him to whip you. I'll see him in the morning and see that you don't get no more whippings. Ain't going back. Sorry, Miss Sarah Ann. I thanks you for what you done, but he done whooped me for the last time. And out Nellie went, taking a basket of food Miss Sarah Ann had given her, and she didn't go back to old man Shelton's. Ain't no one seen her for 8 or 9 days. When one day some white boys had been out hunting and came to tell Miss Sarah Ann what they found. Up on the hillside, they had found Aunt Nellie's body. They knowed it was here because their back was all ate away by the buzzards, had just picked away all the flesh that was already soft and ready from beating. Old man Shelton had given her. Right there beside her was a bread and food Miss Sarah Ann had given her, but the buzzard ain't touched that. Down at the foot of the hill was Aunt Nellie's head. Here it had rolled. The buzzard had picked the eyes out. So she read that story before. She said that story before, and she just gave more information as to what happened and why she ran away. It says, then there was another nigga that was beat to death the same year that Lee surrendered. There was an old tannery that caught on fire, or else someone burnt it. Anyway, they catched the nigga. I don't recollect what his name was. And they said he did it. And he swore that he didn't do it, that he ain't never even been there for more than a month. But they strapped him up and they laid it on him all that day. And long about sundown, then he died. So she's telling stories about people who were brutally punished. One thing we also learned is that there was no court, there was no justice, there was no, you know what I'm saying? If they said you did it, then that was it. You know what I'm saying? Unless some from providence of the Most High or some miracle that's going to turn things around. Oftentimes when they said they did it, they had this kind of vigilante justice. They just jumped up and started abusing people, you know. It says when the Yankees come, they sought to the niggas free, and the niggas went out working just like they did before. Only now what they make is theirs, and they don't have to take it and put it away in the master's barn. And the niggas couldn't say nothing because they was poor. Sorry. And the whites couldn't say nothing because they was poor as the niggas, as beside the Yankees was there to watch him. So again, it was like occupation. The Yankees were occupying the South to make sure of what the former slave masters were doing. I didn't know that before I started researching like this. It says when the Yankees, nope. Okay, but after a while, the Yankees went back up north, and then the poor hickories got to acting up. They would put on the old uniform the Yankees done left behind and go riding all over the land at nights in bands and just shooting up all the niggas they saw. Okay, so she's talking about the birth of what became the KKK. That after the occupation, they were resentful, they were indignant about you freeing my slaves. We didn't really want to do it. They had this level of resentment. And according to, and this is what I've heard in other accounts too, this is not a formulation of the Ku Klux Klan. These are the former slave owners, the former masters that's trying to get some, what they find retributive. Like, anyway, I'm sorry. Let me just read, because, okay. But after a while, the Yankees went back up north, and then the poor hickories got to acting up. They would put on the old uniform the Yankees done left behind and go riding all over the land at nights in bands, just shooting up all the niggas they saw. They would shoot them dead and ride on, the night riders, right? And someone finally sent word up north to the Yankees, and the Yankees come riding back, and the old whites was just as nice and pleasant for a while as could be, long as the Yankees was around. But soon as the Yankees leave, they start again. And don't you know, Yankees had to come back to a Potomac 3 times for the whites leave us poor niggas alone. So you freed, you know, the slaves, but left them in the condition, in the space to further be oppressed. It says Miss Sarah Ann was a fine woman. Even if she was a slave owner, she would never allow no patty rollers on her place, aka the popo, the police, the patty rollers. They was an old man, Uncle Granville, that used to go around selling eggs. He belonged to an old white man named Derby that lived some miles down the road, or down the country road. Old Uncle Granville used to count out his eggs like this. He would take an egg and say, Termina, and lay it aside and say, oh no, and that was one. And then he say, Termina, and lay it aside and say, oh no, that was 2. And then he'll say Termina, and then he say, oh no, that was 3. Termina, oh no, and say that till he know he said it half a dozen times. And if he wanted a dozen, he would do the same thing over. Old Uncle couldn't count none other than half a dozen, dozen and a half, 2 dozen, and so on. You could never buy 3 eggs from old Uncle Granville, nor 7 nor 8. You gotta take a half a dozen or a dozen. That was interesting. One day, Miss Sarah Ann say, Uncle, you better stay here tonight. 'Pears like a bad storm gonna start in a moment. Uncle was kind of bad tongue-tied, and Uncle say, thank ye, Miss Sarah Ann, but I bleed and bless the blide to go home. But you'll get soaking wet. Stay here tonight. I'll tell your master I kept you. I bleed, bless the blide to go home. I believe I better go home. Miss Sarah Ann ain't no matter what Miss Sarah Ann say. Old Uncle just say the same and do it was thunderstorming and a lightning, and he started out in the rain with his egg basket, crossed one arm, and his stick tapping on the floor before him. And when a slave would run away, if they catched him, they would punch and gag and double kick them all the way back home. They did that to a woman that had been beat so bad that she run away one night, was going to make her way to try for freedom. They watched her about 4 miles off, and they did her this way. They cut a fresh limb of white oak and then put a notch in the end of it. Then they bent her over and catched up big pinch and her back down round the buttocks and squeeze it tight in the notch of this limb. They tied the other end of the limb round her neck and around her knees, and that she gotta walk stooped. And they tied her hands round the stick so that if she pulled, she said that if she pulled on it, she pulled out her meat that is in the notch. These people, oh my goodness, man. Sorry. They said if she pulled on it, she'll pull out the meat that is in the notch and make it hurt worse. Then they stick a corn cob in her mouth. Then they double kick her. That is, they make her jump couple of quick steps and then a slow one, and couple of quick ones and then a slow one. And they walk her all the way back like that. Ain't nobody what that's been done to ever run away no more. So it's the psychological, as we all know, the psychological conditioning to torture you. You know, people are running around talking about, oh, weapons of not, you know, this and torture and this and that. You know, one would know. It says, but mind me, child, ain't none of these things took place with Miss Sarah Ann niggas. She was a fine woman, just a Christian doing as they come. She ain't low no one to beat slaves. Her old dad had said that he don't want none of her niggas ever sold, and she ain't sold now one of them. She done much farming, but she hired out all the niggas that wasn't working in the gardens and in the house. Because the money for the niggas Miss Sarah Ann took herself, because money ain't mean nothing to nigga anyhow. And she give them everything they need. Interesting. That's another interesting thing. She's saying that the relationships, a lot of people say, you know, black people have an issue with money. This is a generality. It doesn't apply to all. We know we have some, but as a generality, for lack of a better word, there's a thought process that we don't know how to manage our money. We don't know how to save our money. We don't know how to spend our money appropriately. And the relationship, again, towards money, as she's stating, as a whole, education was withheld, as well as she said here, because money for these niggas, Miss Sarah Ann took herself. So the European was made to handle monies, because the thought was, because money ain't mean nothing to niggas anyhow, and she give them everything they need. And we see this in Hollywood, celebrity, or people who goes into corporate America. And because all the time many people have lacked of color, they go and begin to buy these things instead of investing and doing things. They go bling out the stuff that you were always deprived of, you know, the 50 million wardrobes and the expensive shoes, and you go into their houses, even celebrities, and you're like, okay, and now you're broke. I think I see now they're talking about 50 Cent saying, oh, I was fronting, I'm really broke. You understand what I'm saying? But yet still you go and buy gold chains, you go and buy, and what is going on in the minds of our people? The relationship to money has been compromised, and there has been a need, a deficit on the other side of all of these material things. You got 2 dresses a year. Some people 1 shoe a year, and you had to wash it. So this is in the blood and the mind and the energy of the grandparents. So when I get money, I'm going to get what Master had. When I get money, I'm going to get a big house, because I've always been lacking in that. I'm going to get a Lexus. I'm going to get a Jeep. Let's reassess where this thoughts is coming from. Like that long line of people I saw on the news, or one of the reports, waiting to buy Jordans, $200 sneakers, but you don't have $200. So we will save up our money to buy all of these gadgets, because for me, there's a sense of importance that comes with it that has been denied, not only at this time, but since this time and beyond. So it's very interesting, but you don't have to take my word for it. We could just look at what she's saying, because this is Miss Fanny Berry saying it, and just look out into society. So it says here, though Fanny Berry generally speaks well of her owner in the following tale attributed to Miss Berry, her Miss Sarah Ann is seen as a cruelly causing her dog to bite Fanny brother's toes. However, the version following this one attributes the cruelty to all white boys. There is no way to tell which of these versions, if either, was actually told by Fanny Berry. So the author or the narrator is trying to resolve some differences, but I say that there could be there was a love and hate relationship between the slave master and the slave. So on one hand, she could very well be saying, you know what, she was a nice lady, and on the other hand, she could be saying she was a wicked lady, because there's a dichotomous thought that she had to say she was nice oftentimes, especially during slavery. They had to pretend. So let's go. It says, my missus used to amuse her company sometimes just like this. She had an old dog who could do funny tricks. And to make the tricks more amusing, she would take my little brother and let the dog bite his bare toes. The dog would do this over and over. This would hurt my brother awful, and he would cry out loud too. And when he would cry out loud, the company would laugh and have a good time over it. Always been their entertainment, because this was a part of the amusement. So one day, I got tired of the playing with my brother. This was all called it amusement. I goes and get a rope, and I decides that I's gonna fix this dog. So I takes the dog way out in the woods, throwed one end of the rope over a limb of a tall tree. Then I ties the dog to the rope. Then I runs, gets the other end, and that I throws over the limb of the tree. I pulls that end till it got high as the limb. Then I tied him there. I went on home myself, and nobody knows how that dog got up that tree like that. When they found him, he was dead, and he had been dead for months. I ain't said a word about it myself. So she murks the dog, who was used to harass her brother in the name of amusement. She says, I had a young brother named James Fat's little boy. I had a brother named James. She said, fattest little boy I ever seen. Didn't live long though, died in wartime. Old white boys living around Miss Sarah Ann's used to pester the life out of him. Had a dog named Browser, they used to sick on him. The dog would jump and pull on to his shirt and make him cry and roll over because he was so fat. Of course, Miss Sarah Ann didn't know it, and I told her. She scolded them boys, but that didn't stop them. So I made up my mind I was going to fix that dog. One day, that old dog come round, and I give him a morsel of meat and led him into the woods. Got him in the thickets as I draped a noose round his neck and clamped up the tree and put him up altar. Old dog was just a kicking and a thumping against the branches, but he couldn't bark because that noose was choking him. Well, I held him till he didn't move no more. Then I climbed up to the top of that tree and fastened the rope on and hastened home. The old boys came round looking for Browser, and nobody seed him. I wouldn't go near the woods for a year. One day, I went out there, and there was that dog still hanging. Wasn't a speck of meat on him, just them bones hanging up in the sky. They ain't never knowed what happened to Browser. So 2 different versions of the story. The end result is Browser the dog died. Fanny Berry of Petersburg says she remembers a young fellow named John Bryce who belonged to Old Man Carter on the next plantation. It says, yeah, we got 2 more pages to go. She said she was tired of talking, but like I said, she gave us a lot to think about. It says, John was married to a gal named Sally, who lived about 6 miles off from Pamplin. John used to have it get a pass from Massa every Saturday night to go see his wife. Please take note. It says, John was married to a gal named Sally, who lived about 6 miles off from Pamplin. John used to have to get a pass from Master every Saturday night to go see his wife. John couldn't read, and Master would always laugh when he give him the pass. And whenever the patty rollers stopped, John, they would always have themselves a good laugh to when they read his pass. So John got to wondering what was on this pass that made him laugh so. So one night he went into Appomattox instead of going straight to Sally's place and got a free nigger man to read it to him. And the free nigger read to him, "To my man John, I give this pass. Pass and repass to Sally's black ASS. If it don't nobody like this pass, they can kiss Sally's ASS." So the master is mocking him by giving him this pass. He's giving him a pass to Sally's black behind. And if you don't like it, you can kiss Sally's black behind. So it says, me and, this is her still telling more. "Me and young Master Tom was a caution. He was a real master too, but I belonged to Miss Sarah Ann because he couldn't own me till he was 21. Used to play together all the time. Used to come down to the quarters early in the morning and call nigh the window, 'Fanny, get up. We gotta get bark.' Remember one day he got me up and we started out to the woods to get the bark for doing ironing. Bark put under the iron on the coals so as to keep the iron clean. Mars Tom and me used to make a game of it. We'll go running from tree to tree, each trying to find the biggest pieces of bark. You see, the big pieces would stick and lasted a long time, so you didn't have to get much. Well, this day that devilish little rascal had brung the axe along. Wasn't supposed to, you know. Supposed to take the paring knife and cut the bark. Well, I spied a big tree and I run up to it and put my arms around it and say, 'I got the biggest,' and I got the biggest. And he come running with the axe across his shoulder and he say, 'Fanny, take your hand away before I cut it off,' and say, 'Go away,' I say. 'I saw it first. Get your own bark.' So he made believe he gonna chop. And though he's fooling, but the axe slipped and come right down across my little finger. See? Chip the end right off." So she shows her to see. "Come right down across my little finger." Okay. 'Twas just hanging on by a little thread of skin, and the blood come flowing out and spattering. And Master Tom got scared and started crying. "Didn't mean it, Fanny, didn't mean it. Don't tell missus. I give you all my sweet bread in the morning." I'm sorry. I gotta take a drink. Go. This is water, by the way. Sorry. Wow, he bribed her with sweet bread. He chopped the girl's finger off. Right. So I say, "All right, Master Tom, I won't tell." And I'll look at that finger and it started hurting. So I catch hold to that little piece that's hanging and pulled it off and throwed it in the bushes. Then I tore off a piece of my petticoat and wrapped it all around it and started for home. And Master Tom come look behind me, taunting all the bark and calling, "Member Family, you promised you wasn't gonna tell." And I won't neither, but just when I got to the yard, that piece of rag came loose and the blood started flying every which way. And Mrs. looked out the window and saw it. And she come running out and yelling, "Child, what you do?" But I wouldn't tell her. Traumatic bonding, eh? Yeah. She washed it off and put mustard on it and tied it up tight. And all the time she kept asking how it happened, but I never would tell her. But she know because she got hold of Master Tom and give him a good whipping. How I know that was because I heard him crying. White folks, listen up, never whooped white children in front of niggers, no matter what they do. But I never did tell. And show next morning, he give me his seat bread. So for those who just joined us, if you're watching this live on social media, if you have any comments to say, feel free to put them in the box and I will read it. Living daily through the Left Project, reading Personal Kid says, thank you so much, Personal Kid, for tuning in. I missed you guys for a couple of days. It's been kind of crazy. And this is why the day portion, I'm going hard on the day portion. I'm making it up here because, again, it just, you know, let you understand how you got over. This is how you got over, definitely, to the other side. Oh, so she ate the seed bread. I'm trying to find out. Okay. Another time Mars come to me and say, Fanny, look here, look what I got. And he had some little sticks with yellow ends on them. I didn't know what they was. So he took them over back of the barn and drawed one cross and a rock, and it made a fire. So I said, Mars Tom, give me one of them. Well, he ain't had but 3, and now he only got 2 left, but he give me one. I stuck it in my hair and went on doing what I've been doing till that afternoon. Then I took it and went inside the barn and put some leaves down in the corner and struck this piece of wood across a rock, just like Mars Tom done. And sure enough, it made fire. Matches. And I dropped it in the leaves and run out the barn down in the cornfield. And pretty soon the smoke come rolling out and the flames show, and there was the corner of the barn on fire. It was getting bigger and bigger, and I could hear it crackling. Then I hear everybody yelling, and pretty soon our moss come running and shouting at everybody. Well, they formed a chain and passed water from the well, and pretty soon they put it out. Then old Moss called all the nigger children together and told them he was gonna whoop every last one of them because he knows one of them done made that fire. And he whooped them too till he got tired. Whilst I lay there in the cornfield, not daring to raise my head, never did whip me, and I never did play with none of them fire sticks no more. So she just, Miss Fanny Berry's a trick because she getting people in trouble, and then the people who's supposed to get in trouble, she don't say nothing. And she's covering for Mass Tom for some sweet bread, but she started a fire in the barn and let her fellow slaves get whipped. Food for thought now. Okay, Suki. This is a story. This is a well-known story right here. Suki was her name. She was a big strapping nigger gal that never had nothing to say much. She used to cook for Miss Sarah Ann, but old Mas was always trying to make Suki his gal. One day, Suki was in the kitchen making soap, had 3 big pots of lye just coming to a boil in the fireplace when old Mas come in for to get order him. Like he tried to get after her about something. He lay into her, but she ain't answer him a word. Like he was pressing her like Suki. And then he tells Suki to take off her dress. She told him no. Then he grabbed her and pulled it down off her shoulders. When he done that, he forgot. But whooping her, I guess, because he grabbed hold of her and tried to pull her down on the floor. Then that black gal got mad. She took and punched old Moss and made him break loose. And then she gave him a shove and pushed his hind parts down in the pot of soap. Soap was near to boiling and it burnt him near to death. He got up holding his hind parts and ran from the kitchen, not daring to yell because he didn't want Miss Sarah Ann to know about it. Well, a few days later, he took Suki off and sold her to the nigger trader. And they put Suki on the block. And the nigger trader examined her and pinched her. And they done opened her mouth and stuck their fingers in to see her teeth was. Then Suki got awful mad. And she put up her dress and told the old nigger traders to look and see if they could find any teeth down there. Suki was fresh. And old Jim Martha's coachman tell us about it because he done seen it. Martha never did bother slave gals no more. Again, Miss Fanny Berry is dropping some science on us, understanding that. And I heard this story told again, and it's interesting. I see the source of this story about Suki. This was a retaliation. Sometimes, like I said, it takes the form of running away. It takes the form of fighting back. It takes the form of answering back. And for the black female who was on the oftentimes constant assault physically, as we read, they also beat it. Everything that happened to the male, it happened to the female. And so when they would fight back, they would say they were angry or they would say they were mean. And this thought process of the European projecting the angry woman, the black woman as angry, comes from what we just read in the case of Suki. It comes from him not getting his way. And Fanny Berry tells the story as well, that one tried to push up on her and she fought back. And so when he wasn't able to defile you, when he wasn't able to debase you, in what he wanted to do and make you have his children or do whatever, you were obstinate, you were angry, you were mean, you know, you were non-compliant, you were aggressive. You see, after that, he gets her out the way and he sells her. So today, for those who have just joined us, my name is Amuna Yisrael, Angry Black Woman Syndrome. We visited the author of that piece, that book, to show you that when we see that process today, when we see that silencer today, this is where it's coming from. You feel me? We just read one of the key stories that illustrates either they're going to leave you alone, or when they go amongst the other men, when they go amongst other Europeans, when they go in certain places, they're going to say, oh, her, she's angry. Who, her, she's obstinate. Who, her, she's rude. You understand? To put that label on you, to say that you're not easily controllable and you are not compliant to the abuse that they're trying to dish out. So Suki is a very good illustrative story, and that could be found on page 48 in Fanny Berry's portion of Weebles in the Week. So I just had to put that in there because, like I said, as I was studying, this is where it took me to. This is what actually busted the Left Project right open for me, because I was continuing to study for the second portion of the book. And the first portion I just gave in media, but the second portion is what we're reading now, is really wanting to go into these narratives and find out that they're rooted in slavery. But in 2011 and 12 and 13, Michelle Obama is called an angry black woman. You know what I'm saying? In 2015 and 16, some of these very known people are still being called angry black women. So it has lived on for so much and it's still here. So, all right. Oh, I had to say as well, the book could be found on Amazon as well as my website, emunayisrael.com. So definitely check that out. I'm so into it, I don't even be doing any of that stuff, but definitely Amazon, you can look up Angry Black Woman and just follow the link and you'll be able to get it, and let me know. Feedbacks are welcome, and thank you all for tuning in. It says, slave lived just for Christmas to come around. Start getting ready, they fuss, snow, fall. Commence to saving nuts and apples, fixing up party clothes, snitching lace and beads from the big house. General celebrating time, you see, because husbands is coming home and families is getting united again. So the families oftentimes were separated. That's if you even knew where your family, if you weren't sold off some far place. So I said the other day, I do some other videos, and somebody got mad about what I said. But when we read this, there's nothing to get mad about. It's just to get educated that a lot of times the fathers didn't live on the same plantations, as they were abroad marriages. So she says Christmas time in her region is where these families got together again. Husbands hurry on home to see their new babies. Everybody happy. Moss always tend a keg of whiskey down to the quarters by old Uncle Silas, the houseman. Old Joe would drink all the can along the way, but there's plenty for all. If that don't last, Marsh Selton gonna bring some more down himself. So now you get to get crunk, you get to get turned up, you get to drink liquor and celebrate your time of not, this one little bone that we're giving you here. Used to go over to Saunders' place for dancing. Must have been 100 slaves over there, and they always had the best dances. Most time for the dance, they had Dennis to play the banjo. Dennis had a twisted arm and he couldn't do much work, but he sure could pick that banjo. Gals would put on their spare dress if they had one, and men would put on a clean shirt. Gals always tried to fix up for partying, even if they ain't got nothing but a piece of ribbon to tie in their hair. Most times, wear your shoes to dance and then take them off. They was at the club. I always keep saying that. Them old hard shoes make too much noise and hurt your feet. Couldn't do no stepping in them field shoes. Wasn't none of this sinful dancing, she's saying, where your partner off with man and woman squeeze up or close to one another. So she's like, that wasn't the kind of dancing we was doing. Dance spectable or respectable, the slaves did, shifting round from one partner to another and holding one another out at arm's length. What kind of dances? Well, there wasn't no special name to them. There was cutting the pigeon's wings. That was flapping your arms and legs round and holding your neck stiff like a bird do. She's giving us slave dances. So write that down, cutting the pigeon's wings. Then there was going to be going to the east and going to the west. That was with partners, and sometimes they got to kiss each other, but they stand back and kiss without wrapping no arms round like the young folks do today. And there was calling the fingers or the figures, and that meant that the fiddler would call the number, and all the couples got to cut that number. Set the flow. That was the couples would do that in turn. They come up and bend over toward each other at the waist, and the woman put her hand on her hips, and the man rolled his eyes round and grinning all the flow with their feet, just like they was putting it in place. Used to do that best on dirt flow, so their feet could slap down hard against it. Sometimes they would set the flow alone, either a man or a woman. Then they would set a glass of water on their head and see how many kinds of steps they could make without spilling the water. Dancing on the spot was the same thing as setting the flow almost. Just mean you got to stay in the circle. The fiddler would take a charred corn cob and draw a circle on the flow. Then call one out of the other up and dance in a circle. If in your feet touch the edge, you is out. That was just like a cakewalk, because sometime the bake and cake and give it down, cakewalk. And we've heard that saying cakewalk. So she's saying that was just like a cakewalk, because sometime they bake a cake and give it to the one that did the most steps on the spot. Now, I never did win no cakewalk, but I was a pretty good at it just the same, I reckon. So that was Elder Mrs. Fanny Berry, who in the beginning did not want to talk. And at the end, she told us a whole lot about what she knew. This is who we were reading. They got a picture of her, Miss Fanny Berry. And she was like the griot of the town, because she's telling everybody business. So definitely, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I wanted to say something I was just reading, knowing a little bit about the healing process, right? And oftentimes we ask about how the slaves were able to, and now where a lot of healing information is coming in, how to raise your vibration. One thing that I saw often is that they didn't wear shoes, right? And they say today, if you go and look it up, not wearing shoes and standing on the bare earth allows negative energy to leave your body and be absorbed into the ground. You hear what I'm saying? You can look this up after I'm finished talking. So not wearing shoes, you will see a lot of people advise you to go onto the grass or a natural place, because the energy of the earth will absorb the negative energy. So they were complaining. You see, she said she was dancing and it was better if it was on the bare ground, and they would be out on the bare ground. This dancing is another high vibrational activity. If you're ever depressed, if you're ever down, if you dance, if you hear music, this is another high vibrational activity and energy. So when I'm listening to her telling the story, even though they didn't have an opportunity to address what was happening, what for me as I'm reading allowed them to continue to endure was the activities they did when they were not there, which was laughing, and it's hard to laugh, but they continue to laugh, they continue to dance, they continue to sing, and they were on the bare earth. And all of these absorb negative energy and keeps your vibration. This is why for me, the European must have been like, are these like some superhuman type individuals? Like all that you're doing to them, they're still maintaining. And on a practical level, on a healing level, they had kind of something that was able to allow them to level it off. Like they didn't fall into, there were some instances that we just read in her story that people allowed the circumstance to say, you know what, I'm going to choose a different route. But for those who remained, you see this kind of thought process of how they were dealing with the issues they were facing. So that's my 2 cents on that. I think it was very interesting. That was Fanny Berry. This is Amuna Yisrael making up for missing 3 days in the Lev Project Day portion. What I want to do now is, I saw that WGN, they put on Facebook the episode if you missed it on Wednesday. I want to see if I can screen share, and then you guys tell me if you can see it, because if you can see it, I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back and see if we could collectively watch a video to try to put what we have been reading all this time, and see if we can, not just for entertainment purposes, but to see if we can identify any of what we were reading and see if we can identify some of the untold in this. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen, and if it works, then we shall do it. So let me see here. You tell me if you're able to see it. Hold on 1 second. Let me get it here. And then if you can see it, that's good stuff right there. Okay. Ooh. And not only see it, but I want to see if you can see it and hear it.
The following episode is brought to you by Underground, all new, Wednesday at 10, 9 Central on WGN America.
So tell me if you can see it at this point, and if you can hear it.
So follow me up to this about to go. There's nowhere to go, and there's nowhere to go.
I don't really see.
Come on, homie, what happened? You ain't breathing, you gasping. Is ain't ready for action.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me put a pause on that. Were you able to see or hear that? Thank you, Moni, for tuning in. Definitely. Yeah, that was, I needed some water after that one. After that seat bread bribe. I'm like, yo, you got your finger chopped off and you didn't, you know, for sweet bread, you wasn't going to say nothing. That's to show you, again, for me, you heard it, but did you see it, personal kid? Did you see it? I know that part was a little bit dark. Let me see. Because you remember back in school where you were able to collectively look at something. I just think it was just very interesting because when I started reading, when I started watching now, even I watched another movie, Goodbye Uncle Tom. And now you see it so differently. You understand why they put what they put there. You kind of understand the backstory, and it gives you a better visualization, and it's not just entertainment what you're watching. And from there, like I said, we can understand ourselves better because some people are visual. Let me move this up and see if it could be seen, because that was a dark scene. So hold on, you can hear it.
I'm looking for you.
Let's see if you can see it.
They ready for the next course, Liddy, Eve, Rosalie. Let's move.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
I covered for you, but there ain't no reason I'll be in here putting dinners on that table.
I'm gonna let it play for a little bit and then tell me if you can see it. If so, then I'm gonna log off and then come back, and we're gonna take a look at this while it's available.
Already inviting everybody else.
Don, don't be ridiculous. We're not inviting.
Go ahead. Wait a minute, I'm still on the thing. Put it in the oven. That's the baby's like, lady, you've been that's why I gotta take a break, because the baby's like, lady, you've been doing your lead project long enough. So hold on, let me see. I see it. You can see it and hear it. All right. So guess what? I'm excited now. We can see it and hear it. So I'm gonna post this up on social media. Like it's like 3:30 now. Most I will. I'm gonna say like the time flies so quick. I'm gonna take care of the babies right now. And I'm gonna say like 6 o'clock, I'm gonna post it up. And most I will, and we could come back if you're available. We can take a look at it collectively, and of course we can stop in between and have a conversation about what we're seeing. So we can kind of dissect or deconstruct. You see and hear it? All right, that's beautiful. We can deconstruct what we're seeing and hearing so that we can further our understanding, and that would be an interesting thing to do. So now that I know that, I have another movie I want us to see as well. But since this one is available, we're gonna do it together. So until in the next few hours, my name is Amuna Yisrael. I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is the Lev Project. Oh, hold on. Let me stop screen sharing here. All right, this is the left project. I have a few things to do. Once again, continue to be that change you want to see in the world, and never underestimate the power of one. This is why I always say one, because we never we underestimate. Oh, I want to do something, but people don't want to do it with me. Never underestimate the power of one. And when you change, you can bring change. You understand? When you do it for your value and you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and you're not necessarily, then you will attract people at that vibrational level who understands that and they want to be that change. You understand? Oftentimes, like I said, we try to go out and make everybody change or commit to things that we ourselves haven't committed to. And so if we want to change, we have to first commit to it and understanding our plight and our walk in this life. And so until next time, I'm excited. I'm going to be back in a few hours, and then we're going to take a look at the underground. One.